Mike, let me just talk a little bit about the telecom end of things, because that was kind of a big deal this past year. Is that kind of what you're interested in?
Please.
Yeah. Okay. I've been working on the issue of I guess you call it telecom reform for the last probably about 10 years now, so that to more lightly regulate essentially the telephone company industry. And finally, after all these years, we were able to come up with a consensus, generally a consensus agreement on how to move forward, and we passed a bill in both the House and Senate signed by the governor to move forward with that. So what we did is we updated the centuries-old telephone regulations, but maintained the important consumer protections that I think are essential. So the independent local exchange carriers, the telephone companies, if they meet certain criteria, now can be regulated much more lightly like the competitive local exchange carriers. And those are the companies that essentially rent the lines from the telephone companies to provide some competition. And they usually provide their service to different businesses throughout the state. So what we were able to work out is to more lightly regulate these telephone companies in a way that was reasonable, I think, but also maintain some very important consumer protections like basic local service, how to resolve disputes when they occur between telephone companies, universal service. All of this was maintained in this particular bill. And it really was the Rubik's Cube of legislative complexity, because there were so many people and so many moving parts. I was very pleased to see it finally resolved. So legal services that deals with the consumer protections end of thing and have a strong connection with the governor and have a strong say with the governor. We're part of the deal. AARP, which is also a strong player with getting things done, was in agreement. The CWA, the Communications Workers of America, which is the union represented by the telephone companies, the AFL-CIO, CenturyLink, and MTA, they were all in agreement. So to get all these folks to agree to the same darn thing was very hard, and we were finally able to get that done. And the Department of Commerce, which oversees consumer protections, and followed this very closely as well, although they didn't sign on as in agreement because there were a couple of things they wanted additionally, they decided not to oppose. The one person that did oppose was the Attorney General. She was not satisfied with it and thought it was a takeaway in terms of consumer protections for folks. I disagreed, but that was the long and short of it. We finally got a telecom bill through that I think serves the state well and treats fairly the telephone industry. A second issue that was going on at the same time, we're trying to move forward on this telecom reform for these ILECs, or the incumbent local exchange carriers, the major telephone companies throughout the state, was an issue called Voice over Internet Protocol, and that is it's a type of technology that provides voice service that's provided largely by cable companies, for sure. And the House Republicans pushed hard to deregulate all the voice service. I didn't think this was a good idea. All voice service would be exempt from all state and local regulations as long as it was considered VoIP. In my opinion, it's not my opinion, what would happen is all price and service regulations would no longer be in effect. Issues, state policies like universal service, affordable, reliable service, necessary consumer protections, the ones that I kind of mentioned before, would no longer be in effect. So I saw this as a real takeaway for the state of Minnesota for consumers to move forward with that type of legislation. So I was not in favor of it and worked with the governor and the Senate to oppose that. Now, currently that matter is in the U.S. District Court, because basically what the Public Utilities Commission, the agency that oversees telecommunications, they determined that VoIP, or Voice over Internet Protocol, is a type of service that they can in fact regulate. Charter Communications, which disagreed, filed suit at U.S. District Court, so it currently is sitting right now in federal U.S. District Court to determine whether in fact the state of Minnesota has the authority to regulate that VoIP service. And my guess is that whatever decision they make will be appealed to the Court of Appeals and will remain in that sort of netherland of judicial oversight for a little while here. That was another reason why I didn't think it made sense to move forward with the VoIP legislation at this time, since the courts are looking at trying to determine whether VoIP, this internet protocol process, this type of technology, whether it's this gets into lease a little, whether it's a telecommunication service or an information service. The FCC hasn't determined yet in a clear way whether it is in fact a telecommunication service or an information service. If it's a telecommunication service, clearly, then the state has the authority to regulate it. If it's an information service, it does not. So, this is another issue that's going to, I'm sure, arise and appear for the next legislative session and provide for some interesting discussion. The consumer advocates are hell-bent on this, seeing that this does not go forward. So that's kind of where that's at. With respect to broadband, I can let Margaret talk a little bit more about that, but the bottom line is that we move forward with grants for the broadband office of broadband, $35 million in grants with a $5 million cap on grants going to underserved areas. This is for fiscal, we're using the supplemental budget. There was a $900 budget surplus, and that's where that money is coming from. And the remaining $30 million from that $35 million would go to unserved. So this discussion of underserved versus unserved is a huge deal. That's going to be another issue going forward as to where broadband is going to go. There's different opinions on that, and it is a little bit on the controversial side. And I think where the House leadership is might not be the same place where Margaret is on it, but we'll see where that goes. The right of first refusal was a big issue with the broadband grant applications, where the incumbent provider of broadband would have the right to review the grant, decide whether they wanted to move forward. So that was another issue that was a little controversial, but is in the bill. We redefined the state speed goals and redefined what underserved and unserved speeds are, and that affected the whole grant application process. The speed goals were changed from to 25 down and 3 up for 2022, and then 2026, 100 down and 20 up. So again, it might not mean anything to you, maybe it does, but it's important as we, particularly at the grant process. An issue that I got very involved with this year that's telecom related is cyber security. I made the case that the state and the Republican proposals in particular failed to protect Minnesotans from having their personal data stolen. I met with an IBM team in particular, one that does oversees Minnesota security through the MINIT, the Minnesota Information Technology Group, and they said, I asked them, what quote can I give? And they said, say this: Minnesota is a high risk of expensive and catastrophic breach of citizen data. So they were very, very concerned about cyber security. That's Minute was concerned, the National Guard was concerned, the Department of Revenue, they're all in my office to talk about this. I'm the lead Democrat on the State Government Finance Committee, where the cybersecurity funding goes through, and they wanted to ensure that funding was adequate. The governor had proposed $30 million. The House Republicans had proposed $500,000, which to me was insufficient. So there are roughly, FYI, 500,000 transactions a day in terms of transactions at the state level, $28 billion annually that move forward the state systems. And according to the IT folks, the Minnesota systems are probed and scanned literally millions of times a day from Eastern Europe, Russia, Asia, and Canada. So, and there have been major breaches both on a national and state level already. So this is going to be another issue that's going to be huge in the telecom world over the next year, next couple of years, probably for a long time. Figuring out how to fund appropriate cybersecurity systems and then getting the money to fund it. So, Mike, that is the long